Well, today, very excited to talk with Rick Shockley, and I love doing these interviews. And the purpose, before we introduce Rick, the purpose of these interviews, the reason I do these is because certainly to inspire and to inform and to educate. And I think there's no better way to do that than to talk to people who are actually doing the work and getting the results. And so I'm hoping that, yes, A, you're motivated and inspired to think, well, that's what I need to be doing. But B, also, perhaps you'll pick up some strategies and tips and some things maybe that they're doing that you're not doing. And so that's the purpose of this. So I hope you'll take good notes or come back and watch this video often. But Rick, from Florida, what part of Florida again?
Just outside West Palm Beach,
West
horse
Palm,
country.
okay.
Yeah, Wellington, Florida, which is a
Excellent.
big equestrian community here. So that's
And
where I am.
if I could, I'd be your neighbor. But
Yeah,
I
I
think
know you
we've
would.
had that conversation before. My wife's not about to let me move for grandkids, and she loves ice and snow. So I'm stuck here in the
You're
Chicago
stuck.
area. So it is what it is. Rick, let's talk about why we began, why you came to me in the first place. I know you have an extensive background in radio. So, for those watching and or listening, if you come from a radio background, this will be beneficial to anybody, but I want you to pay particularly close attention because Rick is one of you and understands what that's all about and is successfully making that transition. So and you're not just like a 5 or 10 year radio guy. I mean, you've
I,
got decades of background
yeah,
here.
let's leave it at decades. Yeah,
let me
that's.
let me say this: you look far younger than even the number of years that you've worked in radio.
Oh, thanks, Bill. Now, I want to continue on with the video now. No, I have. I've done radio for I will leave it at decades and started off on the air and eventually worked my way into programming and had a chance to program some pretty big markets, Boston, Phoenix, some smaller markets, and have been in West Palm Beach now for 10 years. I actually found you on YouTube through just inquiring, being inquisitive, wanting to know what this voiceover thing was all about. I actually worked with a couple of guys that had gotten some voiceover training and coaching, which I didn't even know existed. And I just started, looking on YouTube, and I found your videos. And I think I joked with you. I sat on my back patio and watched one right after the other. I'm
Well, you
like,
have to have a pretty slow day to spend that much time
no,
watching those YouTube videos.
but it was great information, and it's just what I needed. And I think what really hooked me on you is A, I just sensed this honesty that came through, and B, I knew that you weren't trying to sell a get rich quick scheme. That it was going to be work, and you made no bones about it. I think one of your lines or comments was, "If you really want to win the lottery, go buy a ticket. This is not a get rich quick. This is a lot of work,
Yeah, yeah.
and it is a lot of work."
You're
So
finding that to be true.
I'm finding that to be true.
Yeah.
I went into it though knowing that was going to be true. I had you know no delusions that it was going to be a lot of work.
So you had
So
this. Oh, I'm
go
sorry. Go
ahead.
ahead. So you had this very extensive, very successful radio career. So why voiceovers? Why did that seem to be the next step for you?
Well, I just thought it was a natural progression. I watched one of your videos. I think a friend of yours said it's a funny thing because when I was in radio, or I'm in radio, but in my early days I hated production. To walk into the production studio and see my bin full of spots I had to do was like to me it was like doing homework from class.
Yeah.
I hated it. But to me, this is a natural progression. It's a talent I have. I think I have that I can carry forward for a long, long time. I still do radio, but I wanted to get some training, knowing okay, I'm a radio guy. I've done top 40 radio where it was all about projecting and high energy,
Yeah.
everything that you have to pull back on when you start to do voiceover work. So I found you, and we went through some coaching sessions, and I have to tell you, they were pretty painful. I think they were more painful for my wife than for me.
Well, and I've got to throw this, and maybe you're getting ready to mention this, but your wife actually sat in on all the sessions,
Yes, she did.
the training, and I think she in the demo sessions as well when we were recording when I was directing you through the demo session. It was interesting. And I was just hoping she wouldn't be too hard on you, but I think she was harder on you than anybody in a loving way, of course.
But absolutely, and she can listen to something I record today and say it's still not quite right. I
Yeah.
will tell you, I've gotten a lot better. I really have. And some of the examples you pointed out, Tim Allen's a great one.
Mhm.
I found the music for those Michigan tourism ads. It's a 60-second bed with not, he's not talking over it. And I
Yeah.
transcribed some scripts. And I just practice with stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just
What a great workout.
it's a great workout. But to take the headphones off was another great tip you had. There's so much pulling back, slowing down. There were so many things that I have to tell you, I still feel like the learning curve is pretty huge ahead of me. But I have made big progress. And certainly the coaching I did with you helped a tremendous amount. I
Well,
got some,
I appreciate you saying that, and, let's just stop there for just a second. Not
yeah,
about the coaching, but it's about talking about coming from radio. Because I want to qualify what you said earlier, because you made it sound as if the way you said it made it sound as if you had no skill or talent. You've got tons of skill and talent. I mean, and you have this really. It's a beautiful. I mean, you have this beautifully smooth delivery, which radio, being in it for a longer period of time, I think especially coming out of more of a CHR and a hit background, where you've got to be smooth and fast, and you're given these short, you know, windows of time to do your stuff over song intros, and you're very, very good at that. But decades of that kind of conditioning puts you into you're very good at what you did,
put
but it
you
makes
into
it very
voiceover
difficult.
hell, Bill. It puts you into
It puts you
voiceover
into
hell.
yeah. So
No, really.
talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, when you and I first started working together, I mean, I cut some stuff just on my own before I ever really started doing the coaching sessions with you. And I thought they sounded pretty good. And I mailed them, off to you before we worked together. And I listen to them now and I'm like, wow, what was I thinking? They're just over the top. I think there's way too much sell. I saw this line or read it, and I don't know where I saw it, but it was more about in voiceover telling it rather than selling it.
Hmm.
Often telling the story rather than selling
Yeah,
it. And I've always, with radio spots, and even to this day, there's a certain amount of showbiz and pizzazz that you feel like you have to put into your presentation. If you're talking up a Four Tops song, you just can't be like, and it's the Four Tops. You've got to put some sell behind it, a
right,
little
right.
sizzle. So fighting against that, getting into voiceover work has been a real challenge for me. To take the headphones off and just, most of the time I don't wear them anymore, and it really helps just to hear my natural voice when I'm recording a spot. Um, it's been a challenge to pull back, and slowing down has been a huge challenge too.
Mm. Yeah,
Uh,
when you're used to squeezing 40 seconds of
oh,
copy into to 30-second time
right.
frame on a daily basis, and I'm guessing that was probably. I mean, I know for me in radio that was pretty typical. I think it is for most people.
And I still do radio.
Yeah,
So every single day, well, 5 days a week, I'm still faced with squeezing,
right.
content into really quick spaces. Um, but the coaching and working, you know, with voiceover like I am now has certainly helped my radio work. It's certainly helped commercials and promos that I've had to record for radio. And I approach it differently. They sound much better. They sound more natural. Even with energy, they sound better. I
Yeah,
and
you're putting more tools in the tool belt.
absolutely, but I make no bones about it. I know I have a long way to go. Like I said to you, I knew this was going to be a lot of work getting into it. I bought one of the best things, and I'm going to give you a shameless plug, but it's true. I bought before we ever worked together. One of the first things I bought was the voiceover playbook.
Mm.
Now I went through the playbook and I took really great notes. But I will tell you, for anyone that has bought the voiceover playbook or looked at that, go back and watch it again at least a couple, three times, because there were things that I'm like, yeah, I kind of forgot that part. Little things that I would pick up, but I've used that playbook. I mean, I still search Craigslist 3 or 4 times a day. I've actually found work on Craigslist.
How about that,
I've
huh?
done auditions on Craigslist.
Yeah,
Some of the work I either wanted to take or realize, well, I'm not going to work for that price
right.
if it was offered. Um, Voiceover rosters, the keywords, the search words to look up talent agencies, and So cold calling. There's so much information there. But again, it's a lot of work. And as I told you before we started today, the validation, I think, for me has been hearing back from a talent agency, hey, I really liked your demo, Rick, but right now I have no spot for you. That's changed within the past month. I've actually signed with one agent here in Florida in one of the bigger cities. And on Friday, at the point where I was thinking, oh man, this is a lot of work, but I knew it was going to be a lot of work. Within 15 minutes, I got two emails from two different agents, one that wanted to sign me and one that was curious. I was interested to know whether I already had representation in their city, and it's a pretty big city. So
Well, let's go ahead and say it. It's okay.
it was in Chicago.
Yeah, and a
Now,
big
as a
mouth.
radio, as a radio guy, I think you and I have talked about this.
Yeah,
Chicago was like the best,
it's a big deal. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I love Chicago, love the city and everything about it. But to have somebody reach out from Chicago and show interest, it just, again, picks you up off the floor, off your feet to go, you know what? I'm on the right track. I
Yeah,
know it's going to be a lot of work. I know I have to stay the course. And I know that the more I'm out there and getting my name in front of people and having the opportunity to do auditions, that I'm going to, start ringing the money bell eventually. I'm not
right,
going to
right.
give up. I'm not in this short term. I'm in this for the long haul. And I think one of the first things that in the questionnaire to sign up with you with coaching was, are you into this for 12 to 24 months? But yeah, I am. I'm in for this for the long haul.
Because I mean, you're probably starting to see now that's the window of time that you really need to give yourself
Absolutely.
to gain a
But you
foothold.
also, no question. So I have a lot more work to do. But you're right. You were right. You reach a point where things start to happen. And at some point, I know that becomes exponential.
Yeah,
And I know
it
it'll get to
does.
that
Yeah.
point. But having a couple of agents, and I'll say this, I have not one time sat back and thought, I've got agents because I know from talking with you, watching you that okay, a very small percentage of work is probably going to come through agents. A small amount of work is actually commercial work. A lot of it's audio books, a lot of it's corporate narrations. So I'm really starting to look in all of those areas and trying to really think about this more as a business
Yeah.
than I even have, a couple of weeks ago. I mean, constantly revisiting the whole process, going, this is a business. What are the facets that are going to put this all together for me? E-learning, corporate narrations, audiobooks. I actually sat down and recorded a couple of audiobook auditions over the weekend, which I really haven't really gotten into. But I realize I have to really look across the full spectrum of
Right.
opportunities, work to make this happen.
So, wow. Going back to the agency thing, let
Yeah,
me just mention that. And by the way, congratulations on all that's
thank you.
happening. That is just gives me goosebumps hearing you say it. I mean, that's what I love to hear. That's phenomenal.
Well, it
Um,
validates. It
Well,
validates.
that's what I wanted to say with the agency, and certainly again, and I mean, I know you know this, but again, for the benefit of those listening, having agencies, it gives you access to opportunities that you would otherwise not have.
Right.
Having realistic expectations. I mean, when you're auditioning and competing at top tier, you have to put that in perspective and say, okay, I may not win every job. Matter of fact, you won't win every job, and maybe your ratio goes way down. But when you get one, it's typically a pretty good, good gig. But like you just said, Rick, what that is, it's validations. People saying you do have the talent, you do know what to do when you get behind a microphone, and that your demo's being effective. It's effectively marketing and representing you. So hopefully that just builds confidence on confidence for
It
you.
does. But with that said, there was a little bit of, oh, wow. Now I'm going to get, I have one agent that's sending auditions, and
Yeah,
many times they're like, you know, they're really acting, doing cowboy parts and stuff like that,
right.
which is really a stretch for me.
Yeah,
But when on Friday, when I got the one agent that wanted to sign me, and I sent the paperback work just yesterday, and then the other agency in Chicago that has showed interest, and I just emailed them back today saying, I just want to make sure that I don't let this go. I want to stay on them. I sat back and went, I emailed Mallory, your assistant, and I said something to the effect of, okay, now I've got these agencies that are, showing interest, and I realize I really have to be on my game. So I think the coaching and learning process for me, I realize I have to continue that. I'm not willing to just sit back and go, okay, I've done some coaching, I've done my demo. It's really, and you and I have talked about golf, and I mentioned this to you earlier. Unlike golf, when you go out and take lessons and you get pretty good, you never really get to go play on the tour. But in the voiceover business, when you take lessons and get some voiceover coaching, you do get to play at that level if you're
Yeah.
good enough.
Yeah.
So, but you have to be prepared. So the ongoing coaching and that whole process of continuing to work and just really staying with it is really, that's where I'm going.
It's great because what you're doing now, it's opening all the right doors. And what we'll do as we continue to work together, we'll work on building your effectiveness and auditioning so that your ratio of wins will be as high as it possibly can so that you're capitalizing on every opportunity. And obviously it's unrealistic to think that you win all of those. You just don't. But it's like being a baseball player. You want to establish a good batting average.
Sure.
And your batting average might be, just hypothetically, maybe it's 125 right now. Well, we'll work to get that to 300 or to 400 or whatever the case may be. And it'll be different through different venues that you do work through. Let's talk, I want to talk about, going back to, you established the fact that it is work. So how do you manage that in terms of, time, and how do you budget that into, because you're a working guy. I mean, you're still doing the radio thing.
Until recently, I did morning radio.
Okay.
Very used to getting up early in the morning, ridiculously early. Now I'm doing an afternoon show. Good news about that is I'm used to getting up early. And for me, my brain, the minute I'm up, it's coffee and get to work. I actually get online early. I'm talking 6 in the morning, and start to go through rosters. One of the things that I will mention, it's extremely important, and I think somewhere along the line you mentioned this, is to have some sort of contact management database.
Right.
So when you do reach out, you've got because I've had people respond, and I can go back to an Excel sheet, which is all I'm using right now, and say, oh, I reached out to them. And interestingly enough, these two agencies that contacted me last week were over 5 weeks ago that I sent them emails. I thought, I'll never hear from them. 5 weeks ago, they actually finally got around to the demo or contacted me. But the contact list of who I've called, and I have it broken down by agencies, talent rosters, narration work. I have different subcategories. But tracking that with every call and every email is really important, and tracking the response and the next contact date. So I do that. And the other little thing that I've done, Bill, because I use Gmail along with my GoDaddy account, is I found AOL used to have a feature where you could send email later. Now, I don't know if you use this feature, but there's a feature that you can get as a tag along or an add-on to Gmail called Boomerang. I thought, okay, if I send emails at 6 in the morning on a Monday, where's that going to get me? Because I've been in that position of opening up my email box as a manager in the morning, and there are 100 emails in the weekend. You get lost. Boomerang is a great tool because you can say, send it 3 hours later, 4 hours later, send it on this date at that time. So I try to target my email maybe 1, 2 in the afternoon. Certainly not when people are first checking email. It's a great tool, and I've actually had some response using that because I'm not just one of the many emails that are showing up in the morning. So Boomerang, it's a great tool.
That's awesome. Yeah, catch them after lunch as opposed to...
well, whenever you want. If you want to email, if it's West Coast, I don't want to send it 6 in the morning. That's 3 in the morning.
Right.
So but you can tell this program, it's just a tag along to Gmail, when to send it, and it's really a good tool.
See, now, I mean, you're working like a business guy. I mean, and being in radio and in management and programming, I mean, you have a promotional mind to begin with. You have to have that job.
Right. Sure.
So you're using a lot of what you've already known and bringing it over. And so again, I throw this out to radio guys and gals. Don't discard what you already know, or anybody in marketing or sales at all. Don't discard what you've known. And that was one of the biggest lessons learned from me, was that it all applies. It wasn't that I had to erase the past and start from scratch. All that stuff came into play when I got into voiceovers. It's all useful.
Right. But tweaking it's important. Certainly from a presentation standpoint.
Right.
Tweaking it's really important. And I think for most radio people, I mean, I used to coach radio talent as a program director.
Right.
And I've worked with some people that were incredibly natural radio personalities that just had really great natural voices and great deliveries. And then I've worked with the Johnny Jocks that are, it's 3 in the afternoon on a
Yeah.
Monday, that stuff.
Yeah.
But for most of us in radio, because we've had to project, and as we talked earlier, you're squeezing so much into a limited amount of time. And there's this, for those of us who have been in a long time, there's this paradigm, there's this whole mindset that it's really tough to kick, that you have to project and you have to be high energy or whatever. And it's really a trick to turn that back and dial it back. And for me, that's where the work has been.
Yeah.
As much there as it's been sending out emails or making the phone calls. It's the whole process is work. And the coaching, I wouldn't have thought at one point how important that is, but it's really important.
Well,
It's
and I appreciate the feedback in what you have to say. And let me just say that, everything that you've talked about is just validation of how far you've come from, the skills that you've developed and the retooling of yourself. Because really, it's taking what you were doing and just retooling it into a different context.
right.
And you're doing it. We'll continue to do that, and I'm sure you'll get better, and the results will grow. But like you said, at some point you do hit a point of critical mass, and the growth starts to become exponential instead of incremental. And it's like that's the point. It's like, wow, what have I created? This monster in a good way, that I've created.
Yeah, there's so much to learn, not only from vocal style and the way you approach copy or whatever, to the business side, how you're going to contact and get business. But even then, you get into the technical aspects of voiceover, studio, equipment, uh, you know, editing. Which, by the way, you had a little segment in one of your, I can't remember if it was one of your YouTube videos on editing
Yeah.
outputs. Now, I've always, used
Well, I think
Adobe.
that was in the voiceover playbook.
Was it?
How to edit
You
quickly.
edit the middle of the breath. I've used that on more commercials for work. So little things like, but there's so much to learn.
Yeah.
And sometimes I really feel lost. But there's the voiceover community is very helpful, and I found some really great people that when I had to reach out on a technical question have
Yeah.
helped me. So
It's
huge
an,
learning curve,
it's
but it's fun.
Yeah, well, good, and as long as it always remains, and it should be fun.
Right.
I mean, I do. I mean, I know it's work, but it doesn't feel so much like work when you're doing something that you're passionate about, which
Yeah.
obviously you are. And Rick, again, I just congratulate you on what you're doing, and I thought this is information that others will find valuable, and hopefully, if nothing else, even if you don't follow everything that was just said, it's just take this away. That is, if you have enough enthusiasm and are willing to put in the work, you can figure out the rest.
Got to be willing to put in the work,
But you
and
got to be willing to put in the
have
work.
the enthusiasm, and you
Yeah.
have to get the training.
Well, and
I
Rick, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think you do.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
all of those
Well,
aspects are important.
it'd be a little self-serving for me to say that, but I'll allow
I'll
you to
say
say
it for
that.
you.
No, but again, I'm very excited for you and look forward to continue, to work with you to build success on success on success. So, and
Well,
yeah, I've got to get down to Florida so we can play some golf
it's
as
rained
soon
here.
as when the rainy season's over.
Yeah, you have to come in like November. Come for Thanksgiving.
Hey, perfect. Just when the weather's starting to get nasty down here, actually, that would work out.
You come on.
I'll
I'll
bring the
drag you
turkey.
into a room and get some free coaching out of you.
There you go. You got it. Hey, Rick, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Good to talk to you, Phil.